Sometimes, in the middle of an ordinary day, you stop in traffic, in an elevator, while brushing your teeth, and you feel, without quite understanding, that something is wrong with everything. A kind of tiredness that doesn't come from the body, an emptiness that doesn't hurt but weighs, as if existence itself were misaligned. You feel it, but you don't say it, because nobody says it. Everyone seems too busy trying to look fine, trying to make things work, trying not to fall apart. But if you stay quiet long enough, if you really listen to the silence between your thoughts, you'll hear it, that low hum of dread that never quite goes away. It's there when you scroll through your phone at 3 a.m. It's there when you're laughing with friends but feel like you're watching yourself from outside your body. It's there when you achieve something you've wanted for years and realize the victory tastes like cardboard. But there's something behind the silence, behind the stories, the goals, the jokes, a question no one asks out loud. What if none of this has meaning? What if we're stacking days the way one stacks wind? This video is not an answer, it's a risk. Because today, we're opening the darkest book of the Bible, a book so honest it almost feels like heresy. Ecclesiastes, written by a man who had everything and couldn't bear the weight of having everything. Think about it. Wisdom, riches, pleasures, fame, the kind of life that today would be a flawless feed, a TEDx talk, a best-selling biography. The man who could afford any therapy, any escape, any distraction. And yet, in the end, he says, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Or in the original Hebrew, hevel, smoke, vapor, something that seems solid but slips through your fingers. He wasn't depressed, he was awake, and that might be worse. Because depression you can treat. Depression has a name, a diagnosis, a path forward. But what do you do when you're completely sane and life still feels fundamentally broken? What do you do when the problem isn't your mental health, but reality itself? Have you felt this? Have you gotten what you wanted and still felt a bitter aftertaste? Have you looked at someone you love and wondered how long they'll still be there? How long before entropy takes them too? Have you achieved something big and realized it changed nothing inside you? That you're still the same anxious, hollow person, just with a better title? Ecclesiastes is not a manual. It's a mirror, and maybe the cruelest one of all. Because it doesn't show us how to win at life. It shows that no one wins. Not the righteous, not the wicked, not the wise, not the fool. Everyone ends in the same dust. The billionaire and the beggar decompose at the same rate. But that's where something shifts. Because this dark book might also be the most liberating one. Yes, everything is vanity. But what if that's exactly why living now matters so much? There are people who suddenly stop listening to music. They open Spotify, stare at the screen, and nothing plays. It's not lack of time or taste. At some invisible point, life lost its soundtrack. It doesn't seem dramatic, but that's when pleasure turns into noise, when beauty loses flavor, when the new starts looking too much like the old. Something dies inside, not with a scream, but with a whisper. One morning you wake up and realize you can't remember the last time you felt truly excited about anything. Not sad, just neutral, empty, going through the motions. It's the exhaustion of excess, and it doesn't hurt like a blow, it corrodes like rust. Ecclesiastes was written by someone who lived this before any of us, not because of poverty, but because of abundance, and that changes everything. I built houses for myself, planted vineyards, made gardens, accumulated gold, had servants, possessions, women, everything my eyes desired. I denied myself nothing. This isn't the speech of a monk, it's the testament of a lucid hedonist, someone who tried it all, who pushed every boundary, who lived the life most people fantasize about. And in the end, he concludes, all was vanity and chasing after the wind. You know what's terrifying about this? He's not saying he failed, he's saying he succeeded, and success was empty. Today, we call this the hedonic treadmill, a concept from behavioral psychology showing how any achievement or pleasure dissolves over time, and humans return to the same point of desire. Another promotion, another body, another like, and nothing. The dopamine spike gets smaller every time. You need more to feel less. David Wallace saw this pattern and wrote, "Everybody worships something. The only choice is what to worship, and almost everything you worship will eat you alive." And we are being eaten. We live in an age where pleasure is abundant, but meaning is scarce. Pornography is one click away, but intimacy has become a phobia. Food is fast, but eating is full of guilt. Entertainment is infinite, but the mind is constantly bored. Desire became an algorithm and the heart a consumer object. We've optimized everything except the one thing that matters, knowing what we're optimizing for. Think about it. You have access to more entertainment than a medieval king could imagine, more food variety than emperors, more potential sexual partners through apps than your great-grandparents met in their entire lives. And yet, are you happier, or are you just more distracted? Arthur Schopenhauer said life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. But the man of Ecclesiastes saw something worse. Between pain and boredom, there's a false relief, dehydrated pleasure, an anesthesia that disguises the absurd. At this point, the video could offer you a solution, a 5-step program, a morning routine, a mindset shift. How do we escape this? But that would be dishonest, because the most brutal truth is that there is no simple escape from saturation. When everything is possible, everything loses weight. When everything is within reach, nothing is a conquest anymore. When you can have anything, nothing feels like enough. That's why the narrator of Ecclesiastes is so relevant today. He's not depressed, he's awake. He saw the top and realized there was no sky there, just more emptiness, dressed in better clothes. The Czech writer Milan Kundera wrote something similar. Vertigo is not the fear of falling, but the desire to fall. And maybe that's what we feel sometimes. Not fear of losing everything, but a dark curiosity about whether losing something might finally wake us up, whether hitting bottom might feel more real than this comfortable numbness. This chapter doesn't end with an answer. It ends with an uncomfortable noise, like the silence of a song that once was your favorite and now doesn't play anymore. A woman put her spoon down on the plate and said that God has a purpose for everything. It was a funeral. Her father had just died at 49 from aggressive cancer. No one knew what to say, so everyone nodded as if faith were the same as acceptance. But the truth is, she didn't believe that. She was speaking by protocol, like repeating a forgotten password just so the system wouldn't crash. Deep down, she wanted to ask what almost no one dares to ask. Where was God when everything went wrong? And here's what makes it worse. She felt guilty for even thinking that, as if doubt were betrayal, as if questioning meant you never really believed. So she swallowed the question along with her grief, and both sat in her stomach like stones. And the most brutal part is that the Bible contains this question, hidden or rather exposed in Ecclesiastes. Wisdom increases sorrow, and whoever increases knowledge increases pain. This is a verse sermons skip, but it's there, raw, irrefutable, and it carries a rare paradox. The more conscious you are of life, the more unbearable it becomes. The wise suffer not because of weakness, but because of lucidity. Ignorance isn't just bliss, it's survival. The smarter you get, the more you see the cracks. The more you learn about history, psychology, biology, the harder it becomes to believe in cosmic justice. You start seeing patterns. Good people destroyed by randomness, evil people dying peacefully in their sleep, children born into unimaginable suffering, while others inherit empires. Ecclesiastes was written by someone who knew God, not by hearsay, but by dialogue. It's attributed to Solomon, the man who asked for wisdom instead of power, and what he saw with wisdom was an incoherent world, a God who doesn't respond, a time that doesn't explain itself, a justice that fails repeatedly. And he didn't lose his mind, he wrote it down. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called this the anguish of faith, the moment when faith stops being comforting and becomes unbearably risky. To believe without guarantees, to love without return, to trust the sacred when the world only shows ruins. Faith stops being a warm blanket and becomes a knife you're holding by the blade. That's why so many abandon faith, not because of reason, but because of trauma. When pain is concrete, no abstract idea consoles. Tell someone who lost their child that God works in mysterious ways and watch their face. You'll see something die behind their eyes. C.S. Lewis, in the depths of grief after his wife died, wrote, "Go to God when your need is desperate. What you find is a door slammed in your face and the sound of the bolt being turned." He didn't stop believing, but he stopped pretending faith is comfort. He stopped performing certainty for the congregation. Simone Weil goes further. For her, the absence of God is not evidence against him. It's the deepest language of his presence, a love that does not impose itself, a silence that respects the freedom of suffering, the sacred that withdraws so as not to manipulate us. This is hard to hear because we were taught to treat God like a spiritual insurance plan. You pay with prayers and good deeds, and He fixes things. You send prayers up like invoices and expect returns. Ecclesiastes tears up this contract. The narrator sees the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper, sees the fool laughing and the wise dying the same way, and asks, what is the point of all this? What if even God seems incoherent? And here comes a rarely spoken but decisive idea. Maybe mature faith is the one that doesn't understand God, but the one that endures Him, endures absence, silence, contradiction, believing not because everything makes sense, but because everything is unbearable without something that transcends. You don't believe because it's logical, you believe because without it, you'd have to face the full weight of the void alone. Ruben Alves said, "Faith is not a light that dispels all darkness. It is a lamp on the path that only illuminates one step at a time." And that, exactly that, is what Ecclesiastes does. No promise of redemption, no final revelation. Just a man looking upward, seeing a closed sky and still continuing, speaking, writing, existing. Maybe faith is that, staying even without signal, walking without ground, living even when God is silent. Choosing to keep going not because you know it will work out, but because the alternative is to stop, and you're not ready to stop yet. Some people reorganize their bookshelf when life collapses. They rearrange books, align objects, clean edges, as if taming the small could trick the chaos outside, as if the inner world could be shoved into a drawer by color, alphabet, any order that gives the illusion of control. Others go further. They make lists, plan workouts, color-code calendars, track habits, optimize sleep, meal prep. Because if you can control your macros, maybe you can control mortality. If you can schedule your day in 15-minute blocks, maybe you can schedule away uncertainty. Ecclesiastes whispers the opposite. It looks you in the eyes and says, you have no control. You never did. There is a time for everything under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. Contrary to popular reading, this passage is not a poem of peace, it's a diagnosis of impotence, a list of opposites that cannot be avoided, only endured. It's not about choosing the right time, it's about accepting that time chooses you. You don't decide when to be born, you don't decide when to die. You're a passenger pretending to drive. We live in a culture that disguises randomness with spreadsheets. We sell the idea that everything is achievable with effort, intelligence, discipline. The billion-dollar self-help industry runs on this lie. Work harder, wake up earlier, manifest your reality, as if cancer checks your vision board before choosing its next victim. But that's a lie wrapped in a TED Talk. Spinoza said it clearly. Men believe themselves free because they are conscious of their desires, but ignorant of the causes that determine them. You think you decided, but maybe you only obeyed something you don't understand, a fear, a wound, inherited trauma, an algorithm feeding you targeted content, 1,000 invisible forces shaping your choices before you're even aware you're choosing. Your parents' marriage shaped how you love. Your childhood shaped what you fear. Your genes shaped your temperament. Your culture shaped what you value. Your algorithm shaped what you desire. And somewhere in that mess of determinism, you're supposed to believe you're free. And time, this gentle tyrant, keeps moving without asking, without permission. You can be young and die tomorrow. You can take care of your body and have a stroke. You can do everything right and still be run over by randomness. The drunk driver doesn't check if you meditated that morning. Daniel Kahneman showed this clearly. Most of our predictions about the future are cognitive illusions. Our brain hates uncertainty, so it invents narratives of control, even false ones, especially false ones. We see patterns in chaos. We believe our decisions matter more than they do. We overestimate our influence and underestimate chance. Ecclesiastes dismantles this with one sentence: time and chance happen to all. Meritocracy does not survive this verse. Self-help collapses here. 5-year plans turn into superstition. Because you can't plan for the car accident, the sudden layoff, the medical diagnosis, the market crash, the betrayal, the thing you never saw coming because you were too busy color-coding your future. But, and this is crucial, the book does not preach fatalism. It doesn't say surrender to chaos. It says recognize the limits of your leverage. You can plant, but you can't decide if it will rain. You can love, but you can't guarantee you'll be loved back. You can live well, but you can't avoid death. You can try your best, and your best might still not be enough, and that's not your failure. That's just reality. Clarice Lispector wrote, "Life is made of days that mean nothing and moments that mean everything, and none of them can be scheduled." Control is a comforting myth, but maybe it's precisely when we let go of it, not out of apathy but awareness, that life becomes real instead of a project. Maybe freedom isn't controlling outcomes, maybe freedom is accepting that you can't. Ecclesiastes teaches this not with rage, but with a rare, brutal tenderness, as if saying, you control nothing, but you can still be present in everything. You can't prevent the storm, but you can learn to dance in the rain, or at least stand in it without pretending it's not happening. The father came home, plugged his phone, and went straight to the bedroom. He'd closed $1 million deal that afternoon, but instead of celebrating, he stared at the ceiling, thinking about the conversation he didn't have with his son, the automatic hug he gave his wife, the number of times he traded presents for performance. And deep down, something whispered, so what if it worked? His son is 7. In 11 years, he'll leave for college. That's 572 weeks. The father has already missed most of them chasing a success that feels, right now, completely meaningless. Ecclesiastes heard that whisper and named it Vanity. I saw that all toil and all skill in work come from one person's envy of another. This verse is unsettling because it's not about failure. It's about success as disguised vanity, about the invisible motivation that drives most people. Not purpose, but comparison. Not passion, but fear of being less than. You don't want the promotion because of what it gives you. You want it because of who it makes you relative to others. You don't want the house because you need the space. You want it because it signals status. Your LinkedIn profile isn't about work, it's about proving you matter. Nietzsche called this active resentment, the need to surpass the other in order to affirm oneself. The other stops being a person and becomes a mirror, a threat, an obstacle. Your coworker's promotion feels like your demotion. Your friend's engagement feels like your failure. Every win around you is a loss you have to absorb. This isn't a moral flaw, it's a structural reflection of our culture. Byung-Chul Han writes that we live in an era where the subject becomes an entrepreneur of himself, turning into his own company, his own product, his own display window. But this creates an inescapable dilemma. Everything must be capitalizable, even love, faith, pain. You don't study out of curiosity, you study to stand out. You don't train for health, you train to fit an ideal. You don't create for expression, you create for engagement. You don't rest, you optimize recovery. You don't grieve, you process trauma into content. And slowly you stop living. You become a walking resume, a performance, a brand. Even your hobbies have metrics now. Your run has pace and heart rate zones. Your reading has Goodreads goals. Your meditation has streaks. Nothing escapes the logic of productivity. Nothing is allowed to just be. The author of Ecclesiastes understood this machinery and saw where it always ends. The emptiness after the peak, the loneliness of I made it, the uncomfortable silence of now what? And worse, even legacy, that romantic illusion of permanence, is also vanity. For who knows whether the one who comes after me will be wise or foolish? Inheritances are forgotten. companies change hands, children take other paths, tombstones lose their names. Give it 3 generations and no one will remember your name. Give it 5 and your entire existence will be reduced to a date range on a family tree no one looks at. Albert Caraco wrote, "Civilizations, like men, born, grow, and rot, and everything they produce will one day, become dust." It's not depressing, it's just true. And it only scares those who still confuse success with meaning. The vanity of achievements isn't in the achievements themselves, but in the fantasy that they would make us untouchable, more loved, safer, more alive. But no victory erases the fact that we are all passing through. No amount of money prevents decay. No award stops time. No status saves you from irrelevance. And maybe that's what hurts most, realizing that even the best of us might be nothing more than brief noise. Ecclesiastes doesn't want to humiliate you, it wants to free you, to give you permission to leave the race, to do what matters, not what impresses, to exist, not just perform, to choose presence over productivity, connection over achievement, being over becoming. And that might be the greatest success possible. She was washing dishes, a common late afternoon, sunlight cutting through the kitchen window, the radio playing a silly 90s song, soap bubbles catching light, and suddenly she cried, for no clear reason. It wasn't sadness or joy, it was just life accumulated, the weight of existing, the strange gift of being alive in a body, in a moment, in warm water and fading light. And for 1 second, just one, everything felt simple and sacred. Ecclesiastes would say that was where God spoke the loudest. There is nothing better for a person than to rejoice in their work, for that is their portion. After denying meaning in power, pleasure, wisdom, and labor, the author doesn't offer a formula, he offers permission to live the now, not as escape, but as fidelity. Not the Instagram version of living in the moment, but the unglamorous dishes and daylight version. Here's the paradox few explore. Ecclesiastes is the most skeptical book in the Bible, and also the one that most honors the present. Not the performative present, but the invisible one. Shared food, unhurried wine, affection without utility, silence without agenda. It's as if he says, you will die, that's certain, so live before time takes you. Not live your best life in the aspirational sense, just live. Actually be here. Taste your food instead of photographing it. Listen to your friend instead of planning your response. Feel the sun on your face. Notice the quiet. Let moments matter, not because they're special, but because they're real. Albert Camus called this tragic joy, the courage to smile not despite the absurd, but within it. Nietzsche's Amor Fati echoes this, loving your fate not because it's just, but because it's yours. You didn't choose this life, this body, this time, this set of circumstances, but it's what you have, and that's enough to begin. Ruben Alves said what saves us is not certainty, it's beauty, the beauty of warm bread, the smell of wet earth, the silence of a sincere gaze, small things that don't promise eternity but give us minutes of presence, and sometimes that's enough. These aren't Instagram moments, they're not productivity hacks, they're not optimized, they're just life happening when you're not trying to control it, when you're not performing, when you're just here. This chapter is not a happy ending. Ecclesiastes doesn't end with consolation, it ends with reverence. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth before the evil days come. It's not a threat, it's a reminder. Time will pass, strength will fade, the body weakens, the mind dulls, the things you take for granted will be taken, and when life begins to fade, only what was truly lived will remain, not what was postponed in the name of some grand promise. So maybe the only possible path is this, not to seek meaning outside the absurd, but to find presence within it, to eat bread with pleasure, work with honesty, love with surrender, and know that this, just this, is already far more than it seems. And if everything is vanity, let it at least be conscious vanity, a brief dance, but danced until the end. You who stayed until here, who listened to every word, felt each idea, carried silence between the phrases, you were already doing a lot. Just by being here, you sustain a rare space where depth is allowed and truth is felt. That doesn't go unnoticed. If at any point something truly touched you, if a sentence lingered, if an image pierced you, maybe take one step further. Becoming a channel member isn't just support, it's helping build this place of lucid, intimate, honest reflection that's becoming rare. You'll get access to exclusive content, early ideas, and help shape what we think together going forward. And if you want to support in a single moment, there's the Super Thanks button below. A small, almost invisible gesture, but on this side it makes all the difference. Of course, just watching with presence already counts, but if you want to keep this way of looking at the world alive, any contribution is more than support. It's a firm whisper saying, "Don't stop."